Hi, welcome to Anaprime Recap. The god of the undead descends from the heavens to face a simple human young man who challenges him to a battle where only one will come out alive. We will continue our journey through the anime Saihate no Paladin, episode 4, 5 and 6. Facing Stagnate, god of the undead, William looks at the wizard Gus summoning various imprisonment and destruction spells, which makes him feel an immense amount of mana being used, resulting in numerous chains that imprison the deity. Stagnate doesn't lag behind, casting his devastation magic, but Gus is faster and in seconds casts 4 spells in a row that would naturally need several people to be executed, but the old mentor shows his power by reducing the immortal god's body to dust, showing why they called him the Wandering Sage when he was still a living being. Gus turns to his companions confirming that God had not taken their souls and also apologizes to William for what he has just witnessed. While explaining everything that was happening, he receives a fatal blow on his back. Just as Blood and Mary are heavily knocked out by evil forces, the god of the undead resurfaced, revealing that he had separated his power into 2 bodies, but praises the mighty ghost for the feat, for if he had not done this countermeasure he would no longer be there. Stagnate also thanks the young man, saying that it was because of him that Blood and Mary lost their attachment to the post of guardians of the High King's seal. In the past they made a pact with the evil deity to become undead and loyal servants to Stagnate. But William's arrival changed everything, and weakened their determination for the mission, disrespecting their pact with the deity. The only reason the plan was not a complete success was that Gus was still attached to him, which would make the god still wait for some time until the old ghost lost his resolve and thus also managed to make him his servant. William is helpless at the revelations and Stagnate grants him one last decision, to become undead like his adopted family, thus being able to live with them forever. The deity disappears, giving the young man until the afternoon of the next day to decide. William returns home with the unconscious bodies of Gus, Blood, and Mary, regretting with all his heart what he had put them through all that time. He cries, for not being able in this new life to be someone capable of delivering something better to those who helped him all those years. The next day he is awakened by the faces of his family, saying in a relaxed way that he shouldn't worry about what happened. The young man, increasingly sad, apologizes for not being able to help them and reveals that he has memories of his past life, plus he felt useless for not being able to do anything for them. Mary slaps him across the face and, like a mother scolding her son, asks him to pull himself together, for she would not allow those words to come out of his mouth, since he was a special son and able to overcome his pain. The young man cries and she asks him to stand up. William feels better after that scolding, so he asks his family for permission to confront Stagnate and this time be able to protect them. He goes to the temple for a last prayer to the virtuous gods for blessings of protection. Soon after he leaves, meeting the evil deity on the way, saying that he would not give up his life and challenges him to a duel. This attitude leaves the god surprised, but the deity decides that he will not do a direct combat yet, and therefore invokes skeletons to attack him. William finds himself surrounded by a huge horde of undead and deduces that they are the bodies of the warriors eliminated in the battle 200 years ago. The young man is not intimidated by the quantity, casting spells, quickly cutting down his opponents with the acceleration spell. Stagnate sees potential in the young man, so he asks his army to stop, giving him one last chance to decide to be a loyal servant to him, granting him the chance to become a general in his troops. He cuts off his hand, pouring the blood into a goblet and asking Will to drink it to complete the pact between the two. The young man approaches with the intention of accepting the proposal, but with the divinity's guard down, he attacks with the Overeater, the only sword capable of damaging the body of a god and regenerating the injuries of those who use it. He strikes several quick blows, but Stagnate doesn't give in to his injuries, counter-attacking with a serpent, which bites William, causing him to fall to the ground and completely erase due to the dark magic that invaded his body. The young man now appears in astral space, feeling something familiar as he looks up at the night sky filled with stars. Gracefeel, the goddess of light who governs the cycle of death and rebirth, appears, and William remembers that he was guided by her when he made the transition to his rebirth. The goddess asks the young man why he didn't accept Stagnate's proposal, and he says that in his past life he was a closed and purposeless person, as if he was imprisoned. With these feelings, if he accepted to become an undead like Gus, Blood and Mary, he would be caught again by another prison called immortality, making it impossible for him to live a happy life, dying without regrets, which he decided to do when he was reborn in that world and found his new home. Gracefeel sympathizes with his convictions and William seals his vows in devotion to the goddess, who grants her blessing of protection by becoming her divine guardian. The young man wakes up on the battlefield, praying to the goddess, easily able to be involved with her protection, because he has an affinity for prayer, having prayed alongside Mary for many years. Stagnate is amazed that the young man has gained the divine protection of Gracefeel by swearing to the goddess to banish evil from that world with his sword. The fight resumes. William uses a burst of energy to eliminate the skeletons around him, directly attacking the god, who casts his magic disappearing into thin air. The young man thinks he has the upper hand for making the god angry, so he becomes confident, but Gracefeel points out to the young man that the evil deity was only bluffing and headed for his house, since if he could no longer control him, he would still have a chance to take the souls of Blood, Mary and Gus. William rushed in using acceleration magic without restraint, thinking that he now possessed the blessing of the goddess of the cycle of death and rebirth, and so could return the souls of his undead masters to the cycle of the deity of light. This caused despair in Stagnate, who needed to get to the temple of the gods before the young man, so that he could take the souls of Blood and Mary as punishment for breaking the pact. William arrives at the temple, finding Gus trapped and Blood and Mary surrounded by the god. Without much thought he tries to advance to contain the deity, but he realizes that he won't be able to complete his attack. It is then that Mater the Earth Mother, so revered by Mary, appears in the middle of the combat. The goddess gives William the opportunity he needed to attack Stagnate, but the evil entity realizes that the young man has cast his blessing magic in the direction of his own parents, so that they could leave their bodies and protect themselves with the goddess of light. However, Stagnate is faster and cancels the spell. Not counting that Will had already planned this, Blood sneaks up on the god from behind, leaving him stunned. Gus also participates in the combo attack and prevents the deity from pronouncing any more spells, which causes the young man to advance and attack his target with his sword, delivering incessant blows at an incredible speed, winning the battle against the immortal being that collapses and transforms itself into obscure particles, muttering that they will remember his name when it returns someday. William falls exhausted from the combat, reflecting that if it were not for this streak of luck, receiving so many powerful and rare items and having the support of his masters to face the evil god, he would not have won. Blood and Mary approach their son, grateful that he is well. Gus comments lightheartedly that the victory would be natural, since even without blood relation he was the couple's legitimate son. The red-haired skeleton then convinces everyone to drink to celebrate the victory. The old ghost leaves to get the drinks, but William sees his parents fall to the ground as they try to get up, as they eventually realize that after denying their souls to Stagnate and losing their attachment to the material world, they would no longer have any reason to remain in the world of the living. William cries from the pain of separation, begging them not to leave. His life would no longer have any meaning. His dream was to one day bring his children and grandchildren to meet his mentors. The couple understands their adopted son's feelings, encouraging him to continue living, for he would someday find people he could value. His father encourages him to stay with many girls, but his mother scolds him, encouraging him to be faithful in marriage, in love, and at all times to protect the weak. The couple's faces from when they were alive appear behind them and the young man memorizes those images and their affectionate advice. Gus reappears with the glasses and drinks, and for the last time the trio was drinking happily, enjoying the bonding moment. Blood and Mary leave and William makes prayers to the goddess Gracefeel, who soon appears guiding the souls of the undead into the cycle of death and rebirth. In the morning, the young man finishes the tombstones, promising them that he would come back to tell them about his adventures, for in the end it was only a brief goodbye for him. William asks the old ghost for money like a spoiled grandson, and Gus likes the idea of being a grandfather, so he hands the young man a bag of treasures, since being just a ghost he wouldn't be able to spend it. The young man asks why he is still alive, and the old mentor reveals that it was thanks to Gracefeel who gave the trio the chance to continue living for another 10 years, so that they could be a kind of messengers of the goddess, but only he agreed to stay, because Blood and Mary did not want to postpone their deaths. After all, it would be increasingly difficult to say goodbye to William, and they would become even more attached, so they decided to leave at that moment. His grandfather warns that over the years the goddess of light has lost worshippers, which has made her very weak, and it was up to Will to rekindle the flame, invoking her name against evil as he had promised in his oath to her. Gus says goodbye to the young man by giving him his parents' name, and the young man adds the letter G, and is now known as William G. Merryblood. We flash back 200 years in the past to the day of the attack on the High King's fortress. Blood defeats a demon, Mary appears at his side, and the two prove to be a couple in love. The red-haired man declares himself to his beloved, saying that when the battle is over, he will marry her and build a house in a quiet place. They make plans for when they have a son, naming him William, which means Helm of the Will, and they would do everything to teach him all their knowledge, so that in the future when he grows up they would be very proud of his personality. Back in the present day, William walks through the lands of the continent of Southmark, easily defeats some demons on his route, arriving at a stone shelter that protects him from the rain, while he wonders why he has already walked for many days and has yet to encounter any human civilization. After a few miles he spots a city, but finds only ruins and traces of an intense battle of magic, which makes him prey to the goddess of light, who collects the souls of the deceased of the place who had not yet crossed the cycle of death and rebirth. As night falls, he writes around his tent signs for protection to avoid being attacked by sorcerers or even beasts. The young man finds himself sustained only by bread and water because he had taken enough supplies with the expectation that he would soon find a village, something that proved to be totally contrary. As he walks through the forest, a monstrous boar leaps through the trees toward William, who quickly needs to drive his spear into the animal to fend off the attack. The young man checks the arrow stuck in the animal's body, and soon a hooded man with a bow appears, identifying himself as the hunter of the slaughtered boar. William notices elven symbols on his clothing, and in an attempt to communicate gently begins to pronounce phrases in the ancient elven language. This surprises the elf hunter, making him realize that William was peaceful and had no reason to attack. He then introduces himself as a kindred member of that race, revealing behind his hood a long white hair and pointed ears. William talks to the half-elf about also being entitled to part of the game they had shot, which leads to a long discussion about how they will divide it up the boar's meat, but they finally come to an agreement. The young man kneels down next to the animal's head, thanking it for its sacrifice. After cutting off the animal's front leg and giving it to Will, the half-elf comments that the liver is a part that spoils very quickly, so they decide to cook it first. They both eat their meal around a fire, which the young man lights with his magic, but decides not to reveal his skills to the stranger for the time being. After they have lunch, William asks the young elf for directions, who tells him that the next village is a 2-day walk along the riverbed. The young man hides the reason he is lost, saying he is an adventurous explorer of ruins. The half-elf turns away, becoming hostile when William asks to accompany him to his camp. And showing that he was capable of taking care of himself, he invokes luminous spheres, which William discovers that were little fairies. For possessing the elven nature, the young elf had an affinity with those mystical creatures. Finally he leaves, revealing that his name was Meneldor. At dusk William camps in that very spot. When he falls asleep, Gracefiel approaches him and touches his head, showing him images of a village, scattered blood, and the elf Manel. He wakes up, interpreting it as a divine revelation, and deduces that the half-elf was in danger. William lights the tip of his spear and advances through the dark forest. He uses his human tracking magic and gets the exact indication of the village where the target of his premonition was. He approaches the town in hiding, seeing 2 guards making their routine rounds, yet sensing the presence of danger, William comes out of hiding and blocks the arrow attacks with his shield, which almost hit the men. Upon checking the arrow's shot, he realizes that the true interpretation of the vision was not Manel as the victim, but as the author of the attack. The half-elf appears and gives the order for his guild to take over the entire village. He then shoots 3 arrows at the young man, which he easily blocks. The guards warn the town about the attack, so William must use his acceleration magic to get to the center of the village and corner Manel and his cronies. The young elf summons several fairies, causing an earthquake beneath William's feet. But with just one strong step on the ground, all the spheres are repelled in the air. Menel's next attack is a blast of fire, which is easily dispersed by the devout young man. William takes a dash and with just one thrust of his spear handle extinguishes the thieving elf. For his followers he summons a large spider web and wraps them in the sticky stuff. The town guard named John thanks William for his help and explains that the villages in those regions were part of a lawless territory inhabited by fugitives and criminals. The guard says that the captured men are part of a village not far from there and that he doesn't understand why they are attacking that town, since the half-elf has helped them get rid of beasts in the past. The village elder arrives and calms things down, thanking William for his help. When he receives the young man's assurance that he will protect them if anything goes wrong, he decides to wake up the invaders for an interrogation, even though the population is in favor of hanging them. In the morning, the men explain that demons attacked their village, claiming half of the inhabitants. The few remaining were left without shelter and food for the winter. With no alternatives, they form a team for an attack led by Manel, who confesses to be the mastermind behind everything. The young elf says that when he needed help the most, an old woman from the village had her life taken by the demons during this terrible attack, so the half-elf asks that only he be punished, since the men still have families to return to. The village people still insist that everyone must go to the gallows, no exceptions, but William remembers Mary's advice, so he intervenes in that decision. Using the fortune given to him by Gus, he proposes to pay a good amount for the men's freedom. In addition, he promises to destroy the demons in the neighboring village, electing Manel as his newest subordinate. The proposal is accepted by the old man, and once again the young man invokes the goddess of light, who in response casts a shower of blessings on the inhabitants. This meant that William had made the right decisions and Gracefiel was in agreement. The refugees from the attacked village are sent to the village to be safe. Manel and William go on to the village, taken over by the terrible monsters. Will this new traveling warrior duo be able to defeat the powerful legion of demons in the neighboring village? So, what did you think of this anime? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more anime recaps. See you next time.